Sometimes seeing things as black and white is very safe. Sometimes we are afraid to venture into all those nuances in between. Walk with me as we journey through the gray.
We are here. We are ready. Rachel, hello.
Hi.
I'm so glad for us to kind of finally meet, even though this is not in person, but I'm happy for you to be here. I'm happy for you to, share this space. I never take it for granted when people agree to share space and also agree to share a piece of them, right, with me and whoever else happens to see it. So I will let you introduce yourself. I mean, I already kind of said your name, but if you want to introduce yourself and a little bit about yourself, if you like, then we'll go forward.
Okay, well, I am Rachel Fox, and I'm a mom of 4 kids. And let's see, I work at a boutique downtown in Midland, and I'm just a busy mama.
Awesome, awesome. Well, look at that. Okay, cool. Well, congrats on that. And I want to kind of tell people a little bit of backstory how I came across you and we got connected. Um, I heard about a little small piece of your story, and I wanted to reach out because I know several people, right, who have experienced the same thing, and when this has happened in their life, me personally, I'm one of those people that's very awkward. I don't know what to say except
Oh,
for, I love you or I'm so sorry and what can I do? But you really don't know what to do, right? And
right.
you feel like everything you say is going to be the wrong thing,
Mm,
right? So I'm more of that person that will like just do stuff. I'll just like, what do you need help with? And I'll just do that because I don't know what to say. Um, so I will let you share what that story is, and how we got connected in that regard. Because I won't bring up the person that made me reach out to you, so to speak,
right.
but the story, right? And being able to connect with people is so important. So I will stop rambling. We talked about rambling. Now I'm rambling, and I want you to kind of share that part of your experience.
Okay, so as I said, I'm a mom of 4 kids. But my very first child, Ava, was born in '06. So she would be 17.
Oh wow. Okay.
She was born healthy, a couple weeks early, but zero health issues. Didn't have to stay in the hospital, nothing like that. Um, and she one night passed away in her sleep.
Oh, okay.
And they could tell us is that it was SIDS. No real explanation other than that. So it was obviously a huge shock regardless, but to have such a healthy and easy, she was an easy little newborn with
Mhm.
very little crying or stomach issues or any of that. The easiest of all my kids, actually.
Oh wow. Uh-huh.
So yeah, it was in my first child. So that was, I mean, like mind numbing. The pain, was just so intense. And of course, my whole family, she would have been the first grandbaby, and I have a
Yeah.
really, really good support system, though, even, my whole life I have. And they obviously all rallied around me and her dad. And it was just, and he also had a lot of guilt because he had her in the living room with him. And it was the first night I finally allowed him to take over because I was so exhausted and couldn't barely function because I was so, like, how it is with a newborn. You have to feed them, and I was breastfeeding, and I also was just afraid to take my eyes off of her. I guess it was like a high kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the first night I actually like allowed him to take over so I could sleep. And he came into the room in the morning and was like, she's not breathing. I don't know what's going on. And I it's weird because I knew right away that she was gone.
You
Even though,
you felt you felt something.
yes, it was like this super empty, like ache, I guess. It was kind of like an intuition type of feeling. As soon as he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, she's gone. And I felt guilt for not being there with her, obviously,
Mhm.
because that's what moms like to do is, we feel that when we even shouldn't sometimes. So obviously we called, for EMS. They took her in a hurry, and they definitely were hurrying, and we didn't live far from the hospital. So we followed the ambulance, and a few minutes after we got there, they took me in a room and told me that, yeah, she's gone.
Mm.
And so I held her for a while. My family was all there, the ones that, lived in the area. And it was definitely changed me. I don't think you ever like get past it, I think, or maybe that's not the right words. You don't ever, I mean, like, I've come to peace with it. Obviously, I have 4 amazing kids now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they all know about her. We talk about her. We celebrate her, birthdays and that kind of thing. And we have butterflies are our symbol for her. When we see one, we say, "Oh, it's Ava visiting." And so she's definitely always honored, and we always, bring her up. But I still feel that like empty spot, like that
Right. Yeah.
that hole kind of.
Yeah.
So and then the other crazy thing is that my oldest daughter was due on Ava's birthday.
Oh, wow.
So exactly 2 years later, she was due on her birthday. She came early, so she was 2 weeks early. Her birthday is actually this Friday.
Oh.
And then like another crazy thing is that she looked identical to Ava when she was born. Like,
Oh.
I look at pictures and can't tell who's who sometimes.
Oh, wow.
So it was surreal. Just, crazy circumstances, I guess.
Wow. Well, first, of course, I mean, you always send condolences, right? Even though, I mean, it's been a while. I talked to, because I have 4 children, right? And I've never experienced, like, a baby being stillborn or having a miscarriage or anything like that, right? So I would never like try to act like I understand it, right?
Yeah.
But I always am like, oh, I'm a mother, right? And I could,
Yeah.
in your mind, it's like, oh my God, right? And so it's a party in our hearts that just ache with you, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Even though I've never personally experienced it. And it's really interesting too, because I always think about the relationship part, right? And when people both have guilt and blame not each other, but blame themselves, right?
Mm.
Each person is blaming themselves. How did you all work through that?
Well, to be honest, we really didn't. It was a toxic relationship from almost the beginning,
Yeah.
and it was that's a whole nother sticky situation that was kind of going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And to this day, he still has a lot of stuff going on, and it took me some years, but I finally got to a point where I'm living healthy, and I'm happy. My kids are happy. We have a nice home.
Yeah.
I'm engaged to a police officer, and he's cool. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it took many years, and that wasn't the only situation that caused me to not be healthy, but it was definitely one of those main like moments or situations that really rocked my whole world.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, without a doubt. And I know you kind of mentioned some of that before we got on the video. So I mean, and I know you said you could write a book, right, about your stories and things of that nature. Share what you like. Share because right now you look great. Like you said, you have 4 children. You have a beautiful home. You're engaged. You look healthy, right? You look happy. So tell me kind of what happened in your life when you weren't, right? So we can talk about this healing process.
Yeah, absolutely. So I met Ava's father, and he's actually the father of 3 of my kids that I have now as well. But I met him when I was, I think, 16. It was kind of my first, like, what I would consider an actual boyfriend, even though at 16 you don't know what you're doing. But
Yeah.
we somehow, he kind of hooked me in, and it kind of became very unhealthy very quickly, and a lot of control, a lot of kind of kind of bringing me down to the point where I didn't think I could do anything else, like, or get out of the situation. Just a kind of a gradual, I don't know, a gradual control. So he and I went on off and on for like 15 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was, you know, it was horrible. And there were substances involved, and was one of the tactics to keep me controlled. I also take responsibility for my part in all of the bad things that have happened to me.
Sure.
Had I found the strength to leave sooner, things might have been different. But
It's hard, right? It's hard. Yeah.
It's very hard.
I was a 16-year-old with a older gentleman myself, and you're kind of naive at times, and you believe things, and you don't know what you don't know, so you just kind of go with the flow, so to speak. And so, no, yeah. I mean, we have to take our responsibility. We also can say that things are hard, right, when you are young and don't understand. So
yes, I feel like in that situation, when I knew better, I started doing better. I just started, I mean, it definitely took some years to get complete. Like, I would go back and forth. I'd have my strong moments. I'd leave and block his number and like stay at my parents', because it was a safety issue for a lot of those times. It was bad. It was really scary. And that was part of the reason I kept, staying or going back, because it was just easier and not as scary. So I guess the final breaking point, we had our youngest. We weren't even together, but it was just one of those things. She was born at 28 weeks gestation, so she was very preemie. She was 2 pounds, and even in the hospital when we had to stay with her, I mean, I was with her as much as possible, being that I had other kids at home as well. I had to split my time.
Sure.
It was so bad at one point that he would like physically hurt me in the hospital. They had him leave one time because they could just tell it wasn't a good situation. So after that, I fell back into some of my bad old habits that I had thought I was done with.
Well, it was coping, right? It's a coping mechanism. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, definitely. And there's zero excuse. I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, it's because of this, because I know I was an adult. I have, all those tools now. So I know.
Yeah.
I went so far as my parents actually had to take my children into like temporary custody for about a year while I got myself together.
Yeah.
And it was a good 1 or 2 months before I finally was like, they didn't ask me to, but I said, I need to go to a rehab far away.
Yeah.
I need to get away from him. I need to totally redo, like, mentally, you need to figure things out. Why is this happening? What can I do differently? So I went to a rehab out of town. Actually, I had to switch rehabs because the one he found me and was correct.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had to go to one way out of town. I did 4.5 months. They said, this is 30, 60, 90 days is typically what people do. And I said, this is more than just a substance issue. My brain needs rewired. Like, I need to find some kind of confidence in myself. I need to feel like I'm okay without him. Like, cause it got to that point where I thought, I'm no good unless I have him with me, even though it was miserable. So I obviously had to work with CPS, and my parents were amazing. They stuck by me and helped me. No enabling, no codependency, just straight, this is what we want for you and expect for you. And we will help you as long as you're on that journey. And so that's what we did. And I did everything I was supposed to do, got a job, got a place, got all the things, but the other good little tidbit that was kind of like divine intervention, I think, or something. But as I was getting ready to leave, My kid's dad went to prison. So, I mean, it sounds weird, but yeah, like it was perfect timing, I guess, for me to have a chance at recovery, not just from substance, but from him as well. He had such a hold on me. 4 months isn't gonna, be the cure. So it was perfect because he was gone for 2 years. In that 2 years, I totally, picked myself up, got stronger, got all the tools from therapists and doctors, got myself healthy again, not just mentally, but physically as well.
Yeah.
And from there, things have just gotten better and better. And I won't stop. I still have a ways to go as far as, confidence and some things that I want to work on, because I don't think that'll ever change, stop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, don't we all? I mean, really seriously. Yeah. I mean, we all have things that we can work on or should be working on, right? So I applaud you. In that. I guess I want to ask you, because going through that and then having what happened to Ava, I mean, that how did you cope with that? Like, were you able to use your tools that you had? Did that already happen at the time, or was that later?
No, actually any tragedies or losses that happened during that time, I put off the grieving. I totally went numb. The doctor prescribed me Xanax, so I got to where I just didn't feel anything. Yeah. And so then once I got to rehab and was completely, clean and working with therapists and group therapy and all of that, that's when it wasn't pretty, but I started grieving her. My grandma passed away in the same year that she passed away, and we were very close. So a lot of those things, I was upset and very, very, in pain from those things, but I also didn't fully feel them, and I didn't take the steps that I needed. So that all kind of came with, getting on track. So right. I did, and I finally have, gone through the process, but it took some time.
Right. And I guess in my question, I didn't think that through, because you have children after Ava with him. So the rehab didn't happen until later, right? Until after having the other children?
Yep. The youngest, right after she was born, in that whole situation.
Right. Okay. Yep. So how has what happened with Ava, how did it impact, I'm assuming it did, impact how you kind of parented the other children? Was there some type of like over mothering with the other children due to what happened?
Yeah, definitely. When I had Drea, my second daughter, the one that was 2 years after Ava,
sure.
It was really scary. It was like we had the doctor, not because they thought it would happen again, but for my peace of mind, gave us a monitor to hook her up every time we were going to be sleeping, or just any time in general that we wanted to, so that if anything changed with her vitals, that an alarm would go off. So that helped, but then it would also go off because it was glitching or because something wasn't on right. So there was times when I was like, oh my goodness, what's happening?
Panicked, right?
Yeah.
So
I ended up, once she got past the 3 weeks, because that's how old Ava was, once she got past that, I started to ease up and realize that because it happened once does not mean it's going to happen again, and just try to enjoy her.
Yes, that's good advice, because I do think that sometimes in a lot of tragedy, right, whatever tragedy looks like, we do kind of almost hold on to that as opposed to being in that moment and enjoying the new, right? The new. And so my question to you also is, what would you suggest to people, right? Because as I stated earlier, I am definitely one of those people that's very awkward, because you feel it so much, right? You feel so much sadness, right, for that person that you love, and you want to help them so bad, but the words when they come out, they just fumble. Like, I just don't know what to say, and I always feel like I'm putting my foot in my mouth. So then you don't say anything because you don't want to offend, but you don't want to be that person every time you see them. You're like, hey, how are you? That sadness that people do. And it's like, so what are some suggestions? I mean, of course you can't speak for everybody, but from your personal perspective, what would you suggest that people maybe kind of do's and don'ts? I mean, just to kind of give some advice.
I would say each person in my family or circle handled it a little differently, but I would say the best thing that people did for me was, well, for one, help my family through it too, because I, seeing them miserable as they were, I almost felt some kind of like responsibility for it, even though looking back it sounds silly, but I felt horrible for them too. But I think when people just simply ask, what do you need from me? What will help you the most? And if that's just sitting next to you while you cry, or something to take your mind off of it, try to take a walk. I mean, I guess in every situation you need something different, or different people need something different, and it can change from moment to moment. Right now I might feel like being alone and crying in my bedroom, but in an hour I might want to take a walk or go do something outside of the house, or so it's kind of, it varies. But I guess just kind of leaving it open like that. What is it that you need the most right now? Like, what I mean, and obviously all of the things that people did, helped, and I appreciated. People brought food over, because none of us felt like cooking. I didn't even want to eat. People helped with arrangements, that kind of thing, and that's always very helpful. But yeah, I think just kind of leaving it open like that, like, and then checking on me once I was back, living on my own again. Just checking and making sure I was okay, because from day to day you don't know how it's going to be, or how the person will be feeling that day. So
because grief hits you at different times, right? I mean, it's small things that could trigger a memory or an emotion, and grief works like that in such a mysterious way, right? You could be doing just fine, and then you smell something, like it could be smells, and then you just start bawling, and it's like, why am I crying right now? What are some don'ts? Like, what do you look at some don'ts that people, I mean, do you have any advice, like some advice on, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this?
I would say one of my biggest pet peeves was when people would say, well, God needed her, or she's always with you. Like, that kind of stuff does not help. If anything, it made me like frustrated or angry. I wouldn't let it show, but I would just be like, oh, like that's not helpful. Yes, I know, and I do believe that she's in heaven and that she's in a wonderful place, but that's not what you always want to hear, when that happens to you. And later on you can look and think of it that way, and I do. I feel a presence almost daily, but at the time when it's new, it's just,
because I want them right here, right? So right. It's like when people say
not good enough.
yeah, and I've never cared for the God needed them more. And people say that, right, whenever people pass or transition on, and I don't know, it's just always like, well, it has never said well with me. I'll just leave it at that. I just don't like that. So I'm glad you said that, because that's one thing that's always kind of bothered me. And then the other part of that too is, and yes, as you said, you see a butterfly, or maybe a smell, or something else you see that maybe triggers, even in your own children, right? I'm sure you see little facial, I don't know, like you said, your one daughter that was born 2 years after her, favored her. So I mean, that kind of stuff is kind of comforting, I'm sure, where it's like, oh wow, it's like she's here, right? People do say that, right? Like you feel like the person is there. But yeah, at the time it would seem like it would be a little heavy.
Yeah.
A little heavy. And then I'm sure, like, the sad faces when they see you probably doesn't help. I don't think people don't mean anything by it, right? People try to really say and do the best they can, right? And you just never know what to do. What did you feel about, because I know people always talk about I mean, with any passing, right? People are kind of there, like you said, they flood you with food. They're constantly checking on you. It's that after time, right? Whereas like after a couple weeks after this has happened, it seems like people are gone, right? And that's really when you really need them the most, right? Because that's when you kind of are trying to settle back into your normal everyday life. And that's when it's like, this is when I probably need people the most. I mean, did you feel like that?
Yeah, I think we stayed about 2 weeks with my parents. I didn't even want to go into the house.
Yeah.
Really rough for a little while there. And then once we did, I could not go into her room for a really long time. But also, yeah, people gotta go on with their routines too. And I didn't, expect it to just stay that way. I knew, at that moment would come when it's time to try and figure out what to do next. But
Yeah.
it probably was, aside from it actually happening, that was the hardest part, because you just feel, and then for me, I've always been someone who doesn't like to bother people with my problems or my feelings. I like to just kind of put on a tough face, and I've always been that way. It's something I'm still working on, but and all it does is make it worse. I mean, it doesn't help. And then have a partner that was totally closed off to it and didn't want to talk about her at all, because I guess that was his way of handling it. And even if I cried, it was like gonna make him upset. So I mean, so that didn't help. That was
Yeah.
but yeah, that part is very difficult. And I guess the people like my close family would continue to call and see me and check on me and that kind of thing. So that was good.
Yeah. Well, Rachel, I appreciate you. I mean, I mean, this kind of conversation can go on forever because there's so many parts to it, right? So many different things that we could share. But I think that it's nice, and I know people do it all over. But it was one thing that I was really passionate about is having these conversations transparently, where we can just say, grief is real, right? I mean, grief is a real thing, and it's okay for us to talk about it. And our stories sometimes help somebody else that may be grieving, like you said, in that silence where they're trying to be tough when really they're breaking down inside, right? And it comes out and overflows in different ways, which can sometimes be harmful to them, people around them. And so I appreciate you having this conversation and sharing your story.
Yeah, it was really good for me too. I've really haven't done this in years to actually be completely honest about my past, and it feels good. So I appreciate you as well.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait for us to meet in person. And now that I know that you're right around the corner, maybe we can do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I wish you a great evening, and again, I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thanks.